So I hope everyone is well, and thank you so much for joining me today. Take a look at the new Dell Technologies PowerStore appliance. I'm Greg Swain, the Director of Solution Architecture at Winslow Technology Group. I'll start with a brief overview of Winslow Technology Group, then I'll dive into a really short presentation, a couple of PowerPoint slides, and then we'll jump right into the demo. All right, so who is Winslow Technology Group? Winslow, we've been in business for over 17 years as a technology solution provider. We're headquartered in Waltham, Massachusetts. I'm sure many of you know where that is, but if you're not from the area, it's just outside of Boston. We have a distributed workforce, and we've recently opened satellite offices in New York and North Carolina. Our goal is to identify and develop expertise in game-changing technologies, highlighted here today by our partnership with Dell. Winslow works with customers like you to tailor technology solutions that solve both today's problems and tomorrow's opportunities. We specialize in hardware and software and services, not only for the core data center, but also for end user compute, complemented by our security and cloud practices. We are a Dell Technologies Titanium partner, and we're proud to be named Dell Technologies Partner of the Year. We have deployed solutions in 37 states, 4 Canadian provinces, and we have a number of international deployments as well. For the sake of time, I'll ask you to hold your questions to the end. Feel free to email me directly if you'd like. Let's see. These are all of our awards and accolades. Mostly, I like to display this to show that we're not a fly-by-night company. We've been around 17 years. We also have a very active security practice. I think security is one of the more interesting and exciting things now, and a lot of our clients are looking to have us help solve a lot of the security problems and answer a lot of security questions. Today we'll be taking a look at PowerStore. So we'll talk a little bit about workloads, the workloads that most of our customers tend to be exercising in their environments, and how PowerStore can help you manage those, data locality, things like that, how PowerStore is differentiating in that regard. We'll also take a look at some of the features that are embedded in the PowerStore and how it really is one of the most feature-rich technologies on the market. And while it's borrowed different features from the SC series, the Dell EMC Unity line, and Extreme IO, it's also borrowed. It also has a lot of new features that aren't prevalent in any of those solutions, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I will give you an overview of the T versus X models. Today we're going to focus on the T, and right now I know you don't know what that means, but you will in a minute. And we'll take a deep dive into the hardware. I know sometimes it's almost like software is king and software is what makes these hardware appliances valuable. But there's some really neat things in the hardware and the way the software integrates with them that I definitely want to highlight. Then we'll jump right into the demo. We also, today we'll have one lucky winner that will receive a $300 Dell event shopping spree, and you'll be notified by email after the event. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into PowerStore. So PowerStore is the latest, we'll call it mid-range and enterprise Dell Technologies solution, SAN/HCI/NAS. I know many of you probably have a lot of experience with SAN and NAS solutions, as well as hyperconverged infrastructure. So what organizations are quickly realizing is that data is their most valuable asset. And PowerStore has adopted a data-centric approach with always-on data services, performance via next-generation technology, and optimized data locality. The intelligent platform integrates with RESTful APIs to enable programmable infrastructure. It's self-optimizing for performance and integrated proactive health analytics for both reporting and troubleshooting. And we'll take a look at those analytics today, not just in the PowerStore interface itself, but also in the web-based tool called Cloud IQ. The adaptability of the platform gives the ability to service any workload with scale up or scale out options. And if you're not familiar with scale up and scale out, we'll look at a couple of slides that'll help solidify that in your mind. But I think most people are probably very aware of what those words mean. I'm going to try not to beat you to death with technology buzzwords, NVMe, NVRAM, NV NVMe over Fabric, SCM. The PowerStore platform has all of those technologies built into it. I'll touch on them really briefly. If you want a deeper dive on anything you see today, please let me know. Let your account executive at Dell or Winslow Technology Group know, or again, email me directly if you just want to talk to me and have a deeper dive in the solution. Personally, I have hundreds of hours of working on this product before it was released, having worked at Dell and EMC before and through the engineering process. So one of the most interesting things is all the different features that have been coalesced into the PowerStore platform. And while I can't tell you that they've taken engineering from these different platforms in terms of specific code, really the point I'm trying to get across is the fact that this solution does all of these things. And the reason why Dell EMC chose to include these types of technologies is because clients and customers like yourself voiced your opinions. This is what we like about Unity. This is what we like about the SC series. This is what we love about Extreme IO. We'd love to see that in the next generation platform. And I'll briefly drain these. So when we go into PowerStore, you'll notice that it's got obviously things like snapshots, thin provisioning. A lot of that works very similar to how those technologies worked in Unity. Again, I'm not saying they borrowed the code. I'm just saying from a feature functionality standpoint, configuring it, setting it up, the way, the amount of snaps you can take, it's fairly similar to how Unity interacts. Same thing with the file system. It is a containerized file system with a single namespace of 256 terabytes. You can have more than a 256 terabyte. You can have more than 256 terabytes of file on the PowerStore platform. You just have to create multiple file shares. So you'd have multiple namespaces. If you're really thinking about putting that much data in terms of file on a PowerStore, it's not that you shouldn't, but we might want to have conversations about different technologies. ESRS or SRS is just the capability to dial home. And Cloud IQ is that web tool that is predictive analytics and monitoring that is available from anywhere. It's also an app you can download on your phone. In terms of what the PowerStore got from the SC series, it is a federated solution, which means you can cluster these devices together and seamlessly move workloads from one device to another. The terminology that Dell EMC uses is appliances. So every appliance is a 2-node system, very similar to how the SC series is a 2-node system that gives you the capability to cluster and federate and add other 2-node systems together and seamlessly move workloads from one to the other. There is a concept of a volume advisor, which is really just telling you which workloads you should run on which system or which appliance if you have more than one. Balancing cluster resources. Again, this is where we can move data between the different systems so that you get the best possible performance and capacity consumption. Migration out of family. So if you're familiar with the SC series, you did have the capability to integrate the older PS series, or what many of us probably know as Equalogics. These names of these storage arrays never die. I'll be calling the PS series Equalogics probably forever. There is this concept of migration out of family, and I'll show you that in the interface. In terms of what PowerStore got from Extreme IO, a lot of it is the ease of use features, and this is the real value of any all-flash solution. Granted, all-flash means, yeah, you're very performant, sub-millisecond latency, etc. But more than anything else, what it gives you the capability to do is run data services continuously in the background, right? So things like inline deduplication and compression, always on thin provisioning, encryption. The PowerStore solution is always encrypted, leveraging sub-encrypting drives. And then I think one of my favorite carries over from Extreme IO is sub-millisecond latency. Granted, that is a goal in the solution I'm going to show you today. We are running a moderately heavy workload on the solution, pushing about 50,000 IO to the PowerStore, and we are seeing about half a millisecond of latency. So certainly well within the less than 1 millisecond of latency. But again, mileage may vary there. I'm sure if you had one in your lab, you could beat it up and make it push close to that, or maybe a little bit above it. But generally speaking, we've done our jobs correctly by sizing the solution. Regardless of what you put on it, you should see sub-millisecond latency. And for modern all-flash arrays, that's great. If you've been working with storage systems a long time, I mean, a few milliseconds up to 10 or 20 milliseconds was pretty standard. So this next generation of storage arrays leveraging next generation technology like storage class memory and NVMe is pretty much built around giving you sub-millisecond latencies. These two different versions are the T and the X. So the PowerStore Model T and the PowerStore Model X give you different feature functionality. And just boil it down for you and make it really simple. The T is what you would consider more of a traditional unified storage platform, giving you both SAN and NAS capabilities, where the X version does give you the capability by leveraging integrated VMware to run your virtual machines on top of the PowerStore itself. The terminology that Dell is using is apps on. So the X model is apps on, allowing you to run your virtual machines on top of these X models. Here again, just to solidify, the T is a unified storage appliance, right? SAN, NAS, leverages vVols. We're going to see all of this in the demo, and the OS runs in a container. For the X, you're going to run your VMs locally. It still does act as a SAN, so it can provision storage and storage volumes to external VMware environments, to physical hosts, to the Hyper-V environment, whatever you have running. It'll still act as a SAN, but you can actually run your VMs on the hardware itself. And that's valuable for a number of reasons. I think one of the areas that hyperconverged has struggled is, regardless of what you're using for a software-defined SAN, in small or medium configurations, oftentimes we're using mirroring, which is not the most efficient use of your storage. So it's great that you have the capabilities to not only have a hyper-converged type solution with the X model, but also run that environment in a, we'll say, very capacity efficient way, which really helps if you have large capacities of storage, but maybe you don't need that much compute. And that's one of the things I've struggled with when I build hyper-converged solutions for my clients. Sometimes they have 100 terabytes and their compute requirements are relatively low. So a solution like this can help you kind of ease into the hyper-converged world where you still have an active SAN, which can participate in your environment, but you can run your apps right on the solution, giving you incredible capacity densities. Something interesting is that the OS in the X appliance does run inside of the SXI. So that SAN software is running internally on the SXI. So some terminology, every time there's a new storage platform, the terminology changes a little bit. I'm sure most people are very familiar with these terms. We have the concept of a node, and there are two nodes in each appliance. The minimum is one appliance with two nodes. That would be your entry-level PowerStore, whether it's the 1000 model or any other models. They all sort of look the same in that regard. There is this base enclosure, right? And the base enclosure, let's think of that as the brains. If you're familiar with the term storage processing closure or data processing closure, it's similar to that, right? And you can add other base enclosures to give you that horizontal scale, very similar to what we saw in the initial release of XtremIO. XtremIO, when it first came out, was a horizontally scalable product. You would scale all of the technology together, meaning that if you needed to grow, you're adding compute, memory, disk, and horizontally scaling your world, and those solutions would integrate and be able to move workloads back and forth, etc. You can also expand vertically by adding more disk capacity. If you're familiar with Unity and the SC series, very similar to how those work, and very similar to how a lot of the SANs on the market work. Right? You buy the brains, they're dual controller, they have some sort of protection mechanism on top of them. And then if you want to expand capacity, you can just add shelves of disk. We can cluster them, right? So we talked about federating, so we can federate the base enclosures up to 4 appliances in 8 nodes. There's different IO connectivity. Anybody familiar with any type of computer science and worked in a data center knows that, hey, I need to connect via some type of medium, and pretty standard technology here, currently supporting 25 gigabit Ethernet, 1632 gigabit fiber channel, etc. In order to the PowerStore models, so they do range from the 1000 to the 9000. The X and T models are specific to what you're going to do with it, and you do have to consider that upfront, meaning that if you buy a PowerStore 3000 and you buy it in a T configuration, it can never be an X, and vice versa. If you buy an X, while it can act as a SAN and you can put workloads on it, it will never be classified as a T model. I think we're all familiar with charts like this: bigger, stronger, faster, right? And I think one of the most interesting things is as we get into the X models and start looking at those to run in our customers' environments as a / hyper-converged or converged solution, we do have to pay particular attention to the amount of memory and CPU that applications are going to consume. And that's a big part of my job and my team's job at Winslow Technology Group and working with Dell. I want to make sure that we right-size the solution. If we don't, or you grow out of the solution, there are ways to upgrade these solutions via data in place upgrades. And we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of our time today. In terms of clustering, this is really just to hammer home this concept of scale up and scale out. Right? So here's our ability to scale out. We could have 4 appliances with 8 nodes and no additional disk enclosures. Or we can scale by adding additional appliances and then add additional disk shelves. There are some caveats there. I'm not going to drain the ocean today and tell you about every caveat regarding these systems. But just know, if you want a deep dive, let me know. Because of the different types of drives that you can install in these systems, certain systems are only scale out. And currently, if you were to deploy these systems as with SCM drives, so storage class memory, ultra fast technology, think 3D crosspoint, etc., those solutions could only scale out. Any of the NVMe solutions do give you the capabilities to scale up. And then what's new in the hardware? Like I said, I think sometimes hardware is boring, but in this case, I'm kind of excited about it. There's a lot of cool things in there, right? So the drive types in particular. So each solution has 2 or 4 NVRAM drives. There's internal write cache. So no longer are we writing the operating system into drives on the system. They do exist on this mirrored pair. All the drives are dual channel, meaning that both SPs have access to the drives. NVMe has been around for a little while, so I think everybody's fairly clear on what that is, right? It's an advanced protocol that helps you get better performance from your flash drive technology. And then SCM, or storage class memory, is completely different. If you are interested in that and want to have a deep dive conversation about it, I'd love to. If you want to read about it on your own, look up 3D crosspoint, some of the more interesting technology that is storage class memory, or Optane. In terms of something else that's embedded into the solution is a Lewisburg chip, and that's for compression offload. Again, compression is one of those features that can be intensive from a CPU standpoint, so we're offloading that to another chip so that you don't feel that in terms of latency in your solution. All right, I'm going to jump right into the demo now. So I am still in here. All right. Fire this up too. Make sure that's all working. Great. So this is the dashboard on my Dell EMC PowerStore. Again, this is a T model, so this is a SAN and NAS model versus the X model, which would be a converged or hyper-converged solution. So we land on the dashboard. We've got some block volumes here, and we've got all of our monitoring. So we can see our capacity, performance, etc. I'll dive briefly into the hardware tab. And I think everybody's very familiar with these types of views, right? We like our little circle graphs telling us how much of the solution we've used. I am running some VMware workloads, and that's why you see a really high overall efficiency rating. Typically on a solution like this, and guaranteed by Dell EMC, is 4-to-1. So take my numbers with a grain of salt, because I'm running a lot of the same virtual machines again and again. So I'm getting great overall efficiency. In terms of latency, you can see I'm operating at a millisecond, and I am pushing a total of 50,000 IO. Rough and tough about 18,000 in writes and 32,000 in reads. No alerts, reports. Specifically with the hardware, there are some interesting things that you can look at. I'm not going to click on the drives. I think everybody knows how this works. This is an NVMe solution. These are all NVMe flash drives, and these are our NVRAM drives. You have 2 or 4 of these, depending on the model. So 1000 and 3000 have 2 NVRAM drives, and the 5, 7, and 9 have 4. The reason there's 2 blanks here is if you wanted to upgrade this system from a 3000 to a 5000, we put a couple extra drives in here so you have more non-volatile memory to write to, to write cache. The rear view, all of this is interactive. They can click on all these ports, it'll tell you what they are, etc. And then we have an internal view, which again, I think this is pretty neat. You can click on anything and it'll get highlighted. All right. So fairly standard is the compute tab. So this is how I'm going to configure my hosts to communicate with my SAN. In terms of storage, I'm sure many people on the phone are familiar with the concept of LUNs. That terminology does not appear in PowerStore. They call it volumes. So if you're provisioning SAN storage, you're really going to be provisioning volumes, and then you can put them into a volume group. And what a volume group does is allows you to combine those LUNs for protection purposes. I will have you know, because I've run into this before, where I've had multiple PowerStores and I have 2 different volumes on different appliances, and it will not let you put those into a volume group. So anything that is in a volume group needs to exist on the same appliance. You can migrate them to other appliances, but you need to migrate them together. Storage containers. Storage containers here are really for vVols. So think about this as your endpoints for vVols. And then obviously we have our capabilities to build file systems and NAS, as this is a unified platform. When you're going through and building LUNs and leveraging the protection mechanisms, my recommendation is to almost work from right to left. And I'll tell you why. What you want to do is, regardless of what you built, if it's production, you want to protect it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is create a protection policy. And I've actually gone in here today and built a protection policy already. And so we build a protection policy. I'll click on this just so you can see this is. I've also added snapshots. So your protection policy can be both local and remote. I can be taking snapshots internally, creating thin clones, etc. But I can also have a replication policy associated with that protection policy. So I can put all of those things together. And what I would do is associate this protection policy with a volume group. And that's what I've done today. So I made a demo volume group, and I have my demo protection policy. And we can see I have no members. So I would, if I wanted to protect volumes, this is the way I would work through this environment. I would create a protection policy, create a volume group, associate those, and then when you finish creating the volume group, it'll actually ask you if you want to add existing volumes or new volumes. And here we can create some volumes here. In terms of the volume performance policy, this is really, if you're familiar with quality of service, this is just going to ensure that you get the best performance depending on what you select. For the most part, leave it on medium. These modern storage arrays are so fast, there's not much of a reason to change it. Let the system compete with itself and let the volumes land where they may. If you did have something that was more important, you could set it to high. And if there is any type of contention, whatever is set the highest will get the preponderance of things like cache. And it's going to go through and create those volumes right now. And we can see in the upper right, you'll see that it's creating those volumes. In terms of migration, we have internal migrations, and that would be migrating data sets between different nodes, right, or different appliances. And we also have import external storage. So one of the things that Dell EMC is trying to do is, if you have any legacy solutions of theirs, you have a seamless way to migrate data into the PowerStore. And you're going to see other technologies in here as well. Third-party technologies will be able to do the same thing, is migrate them seamlessly into the PowerStore. I know we only have about a minute left, so very quickly, I'm going to jump from the PowerStore into Cloud IQ. If you haven't used Cloud IQ, this is Dell EMC's cloud-based analytics and really monitoring engine for almost anything storage at Dell EMC. So go to my inventory, jump into my systems. I do have both an Isilon and a PowerStore. So let's jump into my PowerStore. We can look at my health score, looking pretty good. Thank you, Raj. He's our lab manager. We can look at my configuration. Capacity looks very similar to what we saw inside of the PowerStore itself. But again, this is capable of being accessed from anywhere. It is based in the cloud, and there are phone-based applications that you could leverage. So we can see again, here's my workloads, here's my latency at just over some places, 0.5 millisecond. And again, pushing about 50,000 IO. And all these little dots are anomalies. So the longer it runs, the more predictive it will get and the better anomaly detection you will have. All right. We're right at the top of the hour, so I am going to jump back into this slide deck and sort of close out my presentation for you. If you're not aware of the future-proof PowerStore and future-proof guarantee from Dell EMC, there's a number of different ways that Dell is really standing behind almost all of their products, but in particular the PowerStore. The three things I really love about this is a 3-year satisfaction guarantee. And, long and the short of it, Dell and EMC standing behind their solution. If it doesn't do what they said it's going to do, they will remediate it, including replace the product or get to something else. There's a storage data reduction guarantee, right? So on the PowerStore in particular, you're guaranteed a 4-to-1 data reduction ratio. Right? This isn't an efficiency ratio. It's not that crazy number I showed you in there. This is data reduction. There are some T's and C's there, but I'm more than happy to have a conversation and get you that documentation if you are interested in the PowerStore or really any Dell EMC solution. And then the nice one that is specific to PowerStore itself is this anytime upgrade. So you do have the capability with PowerStore to seamlessly upgrade the controllers to bigger models, to newer models when they come out. This is sort of a future-proof guarantee that this solution will do what you need it to do and grow with your environment and sort of get you out of that rip and replace cycle. One of the things I'd love to highlight is that at Winslow Technology Group, we have a number of assessments that we do. We have a VMware assessment, a security assessment, and an infrastructure assessment. This is the hybrid cloud assessment, which really starts with an infrastructure assessment. And so often, I'd say, I hate throwing out statistics, but Almost every single infrastructure assessment that we do leads to an optimization of cost and better performance in your environment, even if it doesn't lead to us necessarily positioning a new product. There's always optimizations that can be made through these deep analysis that we do. And we'd love to do these for you. We'd love to have a deeper conversation about PowerStore. So that brings us a few minutes past the top of the hour, so my apologies for going a little late. Again, I am Greg Swain, the Director of Solution Architecture at Winslow Technology Group. I've been working with PowerStore for probably 2.5 years now. I know it just came out for the engineering team. I'm very excited to look at your environment. I'm very excited to show you more about PowerStore and have a deep dive with anyone who's willing to. Please reach out to me, your Winslow Technology Group account team, or your Dell account team. Any one of us can help you look at PowerStore or look at and or solve any technology problem that you're having. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.